Well, welcome to another episode of The Leadership Enigma. You might be watching, you might be listening, or who knows, you might be doing both. Please do check out the YouTube channel and subscribe to that. We've now got, I think, over 100 videos on there, but it seems to be the best kept secret. So please share that with the world. Well, we're just going from strength to strength. We're preparing now for our second live event after a very successful first live event in central London at the Everyman Theatre in Liverpool Street. And actually, I mentioned that for a reason, because we had an incredible time. I was interviewed by the CEO of Vorboss. It was Tim Creswick. And we had a great time, and we had a wonderful audience there. And I said to Tim, you know what? The podcast is a wonderful platform for anyone to come and talk to us about their life experiences and their passions in relation to leadership. It doesn't have to be someone who has researched leadership all their life, because we're experiencing it day to day. So we experimented with something, and I'm looking at my guest now because he is indeed the result of this experiment. And we actually had a raffle, and we drew out a random number, and that random number became my next guest, which I'm delighted about. So I want you to welcome Iain Sinnott, who's the head of international carrier sales at Enreach. But we're going to be talking about something that is passionate to him, and really about all of us becoming a leader and a force for good. So you don't want to miss this episode, because there's a real story to this one. Come back to me just after this. Hi, I'm Adam Pacifico, and welcome to The Leadership Enigma, a world-ranked, award-winning podcast that's insatiably curious as regards what leaders do, how they do it, and importantly, why. We'll delve into the human doing, but even deeper into the human being and the power of human-centered leadership to drive sustainable change. So whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, corporate executive, each week we speak to global experts, academics, rising stars, ambitious upstarts and disruptors, as together we will discover that success leaves clues. So it's a massive warm welcome to Iain. Well, that was my attempt at giving a little bit of context as to how we met and how you've come now to be in the studio.
I think it's a perfect description. I represent anyone.
Well, and I mean that in a good way, because I've always said, with the platform, with the podcast, and this came out in conversation, every single episode is a privilege. Every single episode, I think, is humbling. Every single episode provides learning, and learning comes from everywhere, not just those who tend to specialize in leadership.
I think the key is, if you're looking for learning, you can see learning happening all the time. You walk the dog across the park and you watch a football coach dealing with a situation with a young person on a football pitch. You know, you go anywhere. You go into a supermarket. I had an experience when I was due to fly with EasyJet, and we could see the plane and we could smell the plane, but there weren't any crew to fly the plane.
Right.
So somebody had to cancel the flight.
Right.
But they sent two people down in high vises who spoke very clearly and helped everybody. And a bad situation was made better by clear leadership, by people taking personal responsibility and doing a great job. So, yeah, it's
Life
everywhere.
is full of lessons.
Yeah.
If you're open to those lessons.
And I think, again, that's one of the lessons for us. Be open to leadership, be open to leading. But again, get involved and don't do nothing. Start to think about things more deeply.
Well, we're going to really focus in on that for this particular episode. But let's still just come back to some of the context I gave, because you were in the audience.
Yes.
At the Everyman for our first live event, which I had a huge amount of fun. Just tell everyone how you came to be part of that audience, because it was a fantastic venue, wasn't it?
Well, it was a lovely venue, and it was a great conversation. And before I forget, I thank you for the comment, which was the children of everybody you lead will know your name. Yeah. It's up to you what context they place that in. And I thought that was really clever. I mean, I went away and I just wanted to write that down.
It was wisdom given to me.
Well, I think it's one of those things. The responsibility of leadership goes beyond the person that you're dealing with, because we are all family, we are all people, we have our own lives behind it. But I mean, I'd reached out to Tim because of his role as the chair of the
He's the telecom.
ITP.
I think so. Yeah, so he's the CEO of Vorboss, who put on that show, and it's a huge shout out to them. But he's also the chair now, isn't he?
The Institute of Telecom Professionals, and essentially it was on the back of and accidental stirring when I was watching television at home. And I watched a documentary by Joe Swash about care leavers, so young people growing up in care, either sort of family care or foster care or in a care home. And the fact that at the age of 18, roughly, apart from a few exceptions around the country, that's it. They're out, they're into the world, and they've got to stand on their own 2 feet. And as a result of this launch into the abyss, after probably quite a difficult childhood, 25% of them end up homeless, X% end up involved in crime. It's a real challenge. And you look at it, and within the documentary, it related to, the political structure. These kids can't vote, so there isn't very much interest in them. The ministers responsible for that had been in post for maybe a year or two before they were promoted on, and it was a challenge, and it hurt to watch it. As a member of the society, we made a deal that said we'll look after all the children, and frankly, we're doing the least possible for this particular group. But what really struck in my mind was that there are a lot of kids who grow up in difficult circumstances, not necessarily just the ones in care. I think I saw
a recent headline just this week, Ian, about there's 1 million living in poverty in the country.
And it's 2023, and this is the UK, and we're the 5th largest economy in the world or something.
It's a little embarrassing, isn't it?
We are not doing a very good job.
Right.
What interested me about this group specifically was it's a finite group. You can actually draw a circle around it. They all are written down as coming from care.
Right.
Okay.
So it's easy to define.
Yeah,
the group.
It's a definitive group. So if you take a definitive group, one of the things I know about business is if you've got a definitive task in front of you, you can handle it. If there's infinite variables, it's very difficult. But if it's definitive, you can get people on it. So I just started to think, I've worked in the communications industry, the business communications industry for 30 years or so. Yeah. There are some great big organizations and there are some great small organizations. And I think it's a lovely community. I really enjoyed growing up and being part of it. And it just struck me that perhaps as an industry, with the variety of different jobs we've got,
and the resources,
digging up streets all the way to, sales, marketing, accountants, finance roles, that sort of thing, we pretty much cover the whole spectrum of what people might want to do for a career.
Yes.
Maybe we could become socially responsible for a definitive group of people and create a launch pad for them out. So I am starting to investigate exactly how you can take that particularly large problem and maybe try and resolve it. So that was how I reached out to Tim. That's how I ended up in the audience with your podcast.
Okay, and we're going to come back to, because you saw Vorboss as a great example of some work and focus that they had within this definitive group. But let me come back to where your passion is coming from, because everyone's got an experience or a story which is in some ways a catalyst or fueling what they do. So tell us a little bit about your growing up, because you were helped in a difficult family situation, weren't you? And actually not necessarily by family members. So just tell us a little bit about that context.
Yeah, I mean, my upbringing is not uncommon. There are a lot of people who come from families where the parent relationship splits up. Yes. Not everybody has got great parenting experiences, you know. But what you don't notice when you're very young, and you begin to notice a little bit more when you get older, is that there are a lot of people around you who have an interest. So when I was below 10, because I left Scotland, I was born in Scotland, brought up in Westlinton, Peeblesshire borders, not far from Edinburgh, 16 miles southwest of Edinburgh. So, and I lived in a little village in the middle of nowhere. We were the last house up the top of a hill. Apparently, some other people called it the chicken shed. It was a little wooden house, so apparently it wasn't that great. They bulldozed it just after we left, so maybe it wasn't that good a construction. But and I was growing up in this village, and one of the most fundamental members of the village was a guy called David Close, who was the school janitor, had been a teacher, but then they brought in regulation that you had to have a degree or something, and he was stepped down to the janitor.
Wow.
And he also ran the football club did a lot with the Scouts, taught all the kids in the village how to kayak on the rivers,
right.
painted murals on different walls, and basically was Mr. Village. And he invested in, as far as I was concerned, pretty much everybody. But he definitely invested in me. And you know, I learned, I think, still the most enjoyable lesson, which was to do with football. I was okay at football, pretty decent.
Well, you're sat exactly where Stuart Pearce was sat, just saying to you, all right?
I know, and I listened to Stuart Pearce, and I have to say, when you listen to people, and I'm Scottish, so English football players...
We'll try and get Ali McCoist at some point.
Well, get Super Ali on, that'll take 3 hours of recording, but I listened to Stuart Pearce, and you asked him one of your quick-fire questions at the end of it.
Yes, I remember.
And you said PC or Mac, and it's very easy for somebody to go PC. But he's very genuine. He must be a very genuine person, because he said, I can't handle either of them.
Neither.
There's nothing to do with it.
I remember him saying that.
And I thought it's nothing to just say PC.
Yeah.
But I thought it was quite credible for him to sort of step up and say that.
Fairly straight talking.
But yeah, so my lesson in football from David Close was 100% of my best is enough. I don't have to worry about anything else. The result is out of my control.
Yeah.
I have to give 100% of me. If I come off the pitch and I've given 100% of me, it doesn't matter what else happened. Now, I should help everybody else. I should work as a member of the team. But ever since then, I've been able to play all sports and be ferociously competitive on the pitch.
As long as you're giving 100%.
As long as I give 100%, and then come off and just suck it up. You know, if you win, lose or draw, just enjoy the fact that you got to play sport. So, and that made a big difference to me. And the fact that I could play football made a big difference to me when I started moving around at the age of 10 down to England. So, but David Close was just one of those people who just invested in young people. I asked him why once. And he told me it was because all of his friends died standing next to him during the war.
Wow.
And so he decided that he would invest not only what he should invest in youth in the UK, but what they would have done as well. So that was his motivation. So
this is what I mean by everybody has got the most phenomenal stories and powerful learning. And this is just proving it. Because we met through this raffle.
Yeah.
It was an experiment is the wrong word, but it was, I said to Tim, everyone, if they just stop and think, has got a story and a set of experiences that are deeply relevant and moving to other human beings. And this is a great example of it. So there were a number of people who were former soldiers who helped you in life, weren't there?
So David Close is soldier number one. Right. I think he was probably British Expeditionary Force, Dunkirk, and all the way through.
Wow.
And I think he was a colour sergeant or a sergeant major. You could definitely hear his voice, even if he was shouting into a high wind, that sort of thing. The second one was my best mate's dad, Jimmy Farris, who was just the most charismatic David Niven type character ever. He was a beautiful person, and he just let me sit around their family. You know, I used to go around their house quite a lot. They took me on holiday a couple of times, and he just showed me dad stuff. You know, how to pack the boot of a car. You know, just being around, working hard for the family. Didn't do it. There were no lessons. We didn't sit down and talk, but he just made space, and for the whole of the rest of his life, he was just a great influence on me, and I just enjoyed his company. But again, he invested time in me, made space for me, even though I was not part of his family. And then the third one was my mum's later life companion, who was Colonel Patterson, who drove a Firefly tank after D-Day.
Right.
So landed on D-Day plus 19. A Firefly is a Sherman tank with a massive gun on the front of it.
Okay.
About the only chance the tank division had of trying to knock out a Tiger, although you didn't hang around too long, apparently, to find out whether you'd knocked it out, because it was well capable of blowing you up. And he was just he was like as I was maturing into my, sort of central position, my middle age, my 40s or whatever, he was a great father figure to sit down, drink whiskey with, talk about the old days, learn lessons and share stuff. So, and again, he invested hours in me in terms of chat and guidance and that sort of thing. So yes, World War II soldiers, very important.
Interesting. What does it feel like to have all these people just genuinely investing in you as just a person?
Well, I think once you start to reflect on it, you start to understand what good looks like, because it wasn't just them. There were 2 or 3 more dads. There was Mark Nicholls' dad, John Kirby's dad. They were all good people. But then there was the football club leaders. They didn't get paid.
Yeah.
So they turned up. I never got a lift to football. I had to go in one of their cars.
The world is full of unsung heroes as well, who are just passionate about people.
The scout leaders are tremendous because, they're a crazy bunch of people who let children do all sorts of things that health and safety don't allow anymore. So, you have all of these people who have no relation to you at all, given the opportunity to invest in young people, and they do it so willingly. And so you start to think about all this and you start to think, well, if nobody had invested in me, if I hadn't got lucky, we got really lucky with the housing association that stuck us in Harpenden, which is England's poshest town as far as I'm concerned. Rather than the less desired Luton, Watford and Hemel Hempstead. No offence to Luton, Watford and Hemel Hempstead, but if you've been to Harpenden, you
all
understand.
I can tell you is that they won 1-0 last night.
Well, it had to happen. But no, Harpenden, they put a police helicopter up if somebody drops litter. It's a safe sort of a town to grow up. But so you reflect on the fact that these people investing in you have got you to where you are. So I'm relatively sane. I've gone through my life without feeling that there's a gap or a lack of care and support, and it's been a good journey. So, but you understand what you can do if you invest in young people. You can have a big influence on folks.
And that's really our focus for today, especially in relation to what we can do as individuals, what we can do as organisations, and essentially there's a momentum that is needed, I think, in leaders today to start to invest in other people in order to bring them up. Hopefully the tide rises all boats. So in some ways you were lucky in that you had these people who were investing in you. Otherwise it might have turned out very different, because you said it was a challenging background from a family perspective, but actually maybe the void was... Well,
yeah, you see circumstances where people have had a bad life without investment and they're left to their own device. We see it, I see it more now, or it worries me more now, that we have kids hanging around in the park who are being demonised for hanging around being bored and getting in with the wrong crowd. But if we make the wrong crowd the only game in town, what are we expecting? We also...
Why does it bother you more now, as you've got older?
Because I'm responsible. It's my job. I'm in the seat now, so I should be doing something about it. And if I can be a leader, then I should get more people like me, or more of the grown-ups around, to take responsibility for this. We're quite good at saying, the politicians need to sort that out. And then we're quite good at saying the politicians aren't very good.
Well, it's always someone else's
if the politicians aren't very good, then we shouldn't be putting this responsibility on them. We need to do it. If you look at some of the different leadership that you see out there, people like my wife create a safe environment in which people can do their own thing and thrive. That's essentially... what mothers do. That's essentially what families do for their kids. So that's essentially all we have to do for the youth. Create safe environments in which they can find themselves, find their passions, and direct their energies towards a very positive passion. And yet we underinvest in youth groups. We don't pay for people who are poor to go to the clubs that are enjoyed by kids who are not so poor. So we're limiting the chances of the more vulnerable or the less well catered for, instead of investing harder in them to create this positive upsurge of very capable people. And, my experiences are football and scouts in the main. And I would invite all kids to have a go at scouting, or something like scouting, whatever, different cadet regiments and things like that, simply because there's a place where they can find what they're good at. If they don't like it and they're not good at it, they should go and do dance or art or,
but
music.
It's opportunity as well, isn't it?
Yeah. We should just be flooding the place with free opportunity. Right. If you can afford to pay to send your kids to 8 clubs, pay to send your 8 kids to 8 clubs, that's something that you can do. If you've got clubs that kids can't afford to be there at, we should pay for them to move around these clubs and find their passion. We should show them that we're investing in them, because in my experience, when you show young people that you're investing in them, they invest back. You know, they do the right things. They get into positive streams. So yeah, I think genuinely from a point of view of where I am, I should be thinking about what I can do now to try and change a circumstance which we're happy to sit here and agree isn't good for 2023 UK.
Do you think this is partly fueled by the experience that you had in a positive way of people who were not family members investing in you? And
definitely. I mean, you know, what can I do is a decent question, and the answer is just start with the people around you. Just have a little look at the people around you. What can you do? Start small. You know, Jimmy Farris maybe didn't do much. I don't think he ran any clubs or anything, but he made space for me. He made time for me. So his job was maybe one person. The scout leader was doing, you know, 30 people and giving up a week and a half of holiday to take them on camps and things like that during things. So they were investing more directly in a wider group. But, you know, we can all look around. If you haven't got the skills, if you're not a frontline person, there are plenty of admin jobs in clubs and things like that. And if the only thing you've got is money, give the money, you know. But it's a collective thing. What can we do at any one time in order to make things happen? My son went to Scouts, and after the first time he'd been away on camp, I drove the van that brought the kit back, and we were just throwing the last bits in the scout hut, and the guy who was running it, David, said to me, I said, when's the first meeting in September? He said, well, I don't think we can restart in September. I said, well, that seems bizarre. Why not? He said, we haven't got the ratio of adults to children. Right. We can't open up. I said, forget the ratio. You'll have the adults. Just tell me what the date is.
Right.
So I got all of the details of all of the parents on a spreadsheet, sent them a message and told them what day they were helping with the Scouts, because all they needed was head count. They didn't need a leader. They needed head count. And people wrote out. I got in touch with 3 of my closer dad friends and said, by the way, I've got a job for you. And they went, oh, fair enough. Okay, whatever. So we started off doing the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then we had this rota, and people would phone up and say, well, I'd really like to help, but, I'm busy. So we said, well, that's fine. Little Johnny can't come, because either we're all in or we're not all in. Right. And they went, okay, I'll turn up. So again, I mean, it's slightly more the harder end of the leadership that I've tried to practice in life.
There's the pay it forward piece as well, isn't there? Someone helped you, you now help others, and so
But so that was an opportunity for me to sort of go, well, look, I'll stick my nose into this one and have a little go.
I've got another question for you, Iain.
Yes.
Obviously, you've had a successful career for many years within this industry, telecoms. You're a senior leader now. Is there something as well that's also saying to you, you've risen through the ranks, you've been successful, you've been able to provide, but you still want to actually give back?
I think
as a leader, because you are leading people now.
Yeah, I think I'm interested in the payback.
Yep.
It's just something I've made a career in sales. I don't consider myself as a salesperson. I prefer helping people. I love problem solving. I mean, I think this is the dyslexic in me that comes out.
You've got to show us the glasses now. Come on, you've got to explain this. For anyone who's watching this episode now, Ian's going to go all rock star on us.
So this is how I start every meeting when I do a virtual meeting, explaining that I am not Bono's a less well-known brother with no hair. These are technology that helps you read as a dyslexic. Doesn't work for everybody, but if you're dyslexic and you've not heard of tinted glasses, go
and
out.
That's made a huge impact on your life, hasn't it?
Well,
to read and
it helps me read with lower error count.
Right.
So and it takes away some of the fatigue of reading, right, because it stabilizes the text and makes it easier to read. I still can't spell, and I still can't spot whether I've spelt something right or wrong. So
well, don't worry, don't have to spell anything today.
But the interesting thing I think about being dyslexic is you've got a challenge and you're going to have to work around it. So you start to work out how to problem solve. And so I think I wouldn't describe myself as a salesperson. I'd describe myself as a problem solver.
Okay.
If I went back to school, I solved a problem of what what you do when you can't read the book that the teacher told you to read by the time the next lesson comes along? And the answer is answer the first 2 questions.
Do you lead people like this with this kind of heightened sense of care and wanting to help develop and support?
I'd like to think I've got it right more than I've got it wrong,
well,
but I'm pretty sure I've got it wrong a few times. Yeah, I'm interested in people. I like to see people succeed. I'd like to enjoy team success.
Yeah.
I went to a company called Martin Dawes in 1991. Yes, that is a long time ago.
I remember it well.
and a very good leader, David Goldie, invested in me.
I love the fact you remember everyone's name
well,
still.
Well, here's the thing. He's probably the only person that stopped me, congratulated me for doing well, and then told me all the things that I can't do.
Right.
And then invested in correcting the things that I can't do. So I couldn't do business spreadsheets and profit and losses very well, and I didn't know legal, so I couldn't do legal contracts properly.
Right.
So he gave me a commercial accountant in the team, and he sat me down with William Blumenthal, the company secretary, to learn how to read and understand commercial agreements. So, again, proof positive, I might have been just a jobbing salesperson if somebody hadn't tried to turn me into a business person. So I'd like the idea of being in business and being in management and having that involvement as much as I do going out and seeing clients and try and work out what their problems are and see if my technology can resolve them. So
you've had a lot of people in some ways who have been mentors to you.
Yes, well, we're all inspired by people that we see, I think, and if you don't know quite where you're going, looking at other people and listening to other people is quite helpful.
Yeah, role models in
terms of doing, and there are phenomenal role models. So yes, I think in business, David is probably the most influential. In my private life, it was the 3 soldiers who stick out, but the scout leaders, the football club leaders, and that sort of thing. And then you move on to the big ones that can really sit in, and maybe the project that I'm trying to investigate at the moment is more down to them. But Ludwig Guttmann, he invented or created the Paralympics.
Right.
That's somebody stepping out of the norm and looking at a problem completely differently.
Yeah.
And then you've got Nicholas Winton, who brought the children out of Czechoslovakia just before the war. These are people who took personal responsibility for changing something that's massive and hugely important, and they were nothing to do with it. And again,
and one person can create massive change, let's be honest.
Well, Nicholas Winton was fantastic because he ended up in Czechoslovakia because his mate told him to come and have a look what was going on, and he was supposed to be going skiing instead or something. And he got out there and he decided that this wasn't right and that at least the children had to be got out of this before the Nazis did what the Nazis did. And I think he approached the British authorities to try and get clearance to do this, and they faffed around. So he just created a letterhead and pretended they'd said yes.
Right.
And started the ball rolling. And when they found out, they went, well, since you've got this far, here's the letterhead. Crack on. But what I really liked about...
the power of one, isn't it?
Well, what I really liked about him was, and I'll never be as modest as this, but once he'd done it, he just went back to his normal life and didn't tell anybody until Esther Ranson unearthed it on That's Life. And I remember watching it. I can't remember what year it was, but I remember watching it as a young person. This guy he said it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of his life, being outed as a hero.
Wow.
And so he just did his bit, and then he went on, cracked on with the rest of it. But lovely stories.
And that's really what we're talking about, aren't we? Is personal responsibility, and this is why we really can tie it into leadership. Because if you don't care about people, don't lead. I'll just say that. Yeah. And if you are in a leadership position, then you actually got to give a damn and take personal responsibility and allow other people to take personal responsibility. So let me come back in because you talked about your focus and passion to try and help care leavers.
Yep.
And there was quite a definitive group of people who are the care levers. You were exposed to some great work already being done, I think, by Vorboss. Is that right? In relation to which kick-started this, or is
it's one of those lucky things. You know, the first person you see on LinkedIn after you've watched a documentary that has really stimulated your feeling of guilt or need to be involved, and it leads you to the linking in with Tim.
Yeah.
And then finding out that they run a recruitment policy with local people from the East End of London who have no experience of the job that they're being offered in terms of fibre rollout in London. And they create an apprenticeship scheme, an environment in which people are valued and coached, a real purpose within the whole business to allow people to find their capabilities and their passions. When I went down and I met with one of his colleagues, Daniel Rowe, he showed me the organisation chart, which isn't a hierarchical structure. It's a big, long picture, but it shows...
They've got it on TV screens, I think, in the office.
They've got this lovely thing where you've got this picture of all the people who are out jumping down holes and putting fibre in together, and then they've got all of the other departments, and he will go, that person came from that team, that person came from that team. So it's really a springboard to whatever type of career you wanted. But instead of sitting in the shiny office in the middle of London to talk to me about it, we jumped in one of their liveried vehicles and swept down to Poplar or somewhere down that way to the training centre and went into a class where people were splicing fibres together, which was pretty interesting. You don't hear that phrase all the time. No, you don't. No, you don't. It wasn't what I expected during the day, and it was great. But it was, again, you look at the teachers, you look at the leaders, you look at the pupils or the members of staff, and there was an engagement. There was a partnership. You know, you have to learn, you have to put your focus on it, but they knew why they were doing it. They knew what the cost of shortcutting or cutting the wrong length of the fibre was in terms of their splicing jobs, and how care and accuracy was as important as speed and transition to the next job.
All transferable skills.
All transferable skills, and about finding out the importance of their work. And, you know, there's some very good books out. One is called Gung Ho, which focuses on the importance of work. So, you know, you may think that you're a small cog in a big machine and you're nothing to do with it. Machine doesn't work without your cog. Have some pride in the bit that you're doing. If you want to do something else, do this bit really well and then apply for something else. But everybody's work is important. And again, I think that's something that gets casually ignored when you know the TV is talking about work, because you've got the higher up workforce and then you've got the people down low. Well, that's an incredibly rude way of describing everybody's commitment to their part of the big jigsaw puzzle. You know, and we should make sure that people who work hard for a day get enough money to be self-sufficient. Because it must be soul-destroying to work really hard during the day and then be told that you have to have a credit.
Same hours in the day as the CEO, right?
You have to have a credit to live because you haven't earned enough to live on your own. So anyway.
So again, where's this? Is it a sense of injustice, or is it a sense of unfairness, or a passion for social mobility? Is again this all coming from the story you told earlier, or do you think it's grown and grown in you? As you've become a family man, as you've become more successful, as you become a grandfather, tell me how this has just become such a thing.
I think it's you could probably relate it as an underperformance. If I was running the kids' football team, okay, you know, if they're underperforming and I'm the coach, it's my job to try and find a way of creating a better performance. And when I coached my son's team, who they all started off as not being very good at football, and they got better and better and better because we chose the right approach, which was 100% of their best on the day is good enough. Result not important.
Right.
Everybody plays. Everybody played for the same amount of time, and we created this investment in them, this process that they could engage in, and they got better. So now you look at the way the country's performing. You could say it's nothing to do with me. It's Boris Johnson and that crowd. They've not done a good job.
Responsibility.
No, but it is my responsibility. It is our responsibility.
But it's easy to abdicate.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. So now you ask the question. Well, we are underperforming. So what should we do to perform better? What can we do to perform better? And the answer is, what can I do to contribute? If nobody else does anything else, it will have no effect. But at least I'll have done the bit that I can do.
Even if it's just for one person.
Yeah.
Because then that one person can go on
and again,
the world.
If everybody is saying, well, I will focus on what I can do. I'll take personal responsibility for something that I can see. I'll get involved somewhere. Then we've got to start. But I think abdicating it down to a political group, and this is one of your guests, Rupert Jones, was talking about, are we satisfied with our political leadership?
Yeah.
I think as the voters, we now need to change what we expect of the political leadership. If we want them to do the job. In the meantime, we better get on and do the job and invest in the youth.
There's always a role for us.
Yeah, we can get on and invest in the youth ourselves now. It is possible to do that. Reach out into your community, find a club that you can work with and do something. If we're going to sort out the political thing, we need to create a list of things that we want. What are our outcomes?
Yeah.
And then ask the politicians to put a plan together for that. Because at the moment, as far as I can tell, their plan is to get re-elected in 5 years' time. That's the entire scope of most political parties, is how to stay elected, how to stay in the game. And I think if we want them to be better at being politicians, we need to write them a charter of what we want. What growth do we want in the next 20 years? And actually create some sort of measurement against which we're going to hold them to task, and then set them off on that.
You're also actually talking about role modelling, Ian. That's what I'm hearing loud and clear, is that actually you'll set the standard, you'll do what you can do, you'll take personal responsibility, you'll help other people take personal responsibility, and in some ways it's like a ripple effect. You throw a stone in a pond and you get a ripple effect. And I'm always looking for clues in people's lives, and you very kindly handed me another clue as well, because there's a lovely, wonderful book here called The Adventures of Millie, and 2 stories of lockdown fun. This is your granddaughter, isn't it?
Just explain. Well, I thought everybody brought you a book.
I mean, normally, this is very special.
Normally they're on the bestseller list. That's one of 20 that you can that you've got there. Yeah, it's a limited edition. I could sign it for you in half the value.
But just tell us, this is you and your granddaughter Millie.
Yes. Well, I mean, again, people talk about people talk about lockdown and the difficulties of COVID. I was very fortunate in so much that I did half of my job in remote meetings anyway before it all started. But when we were locked down, my wife was working in retail. My daughter worked in autistic care in a local centre. Yeah. Which meant that Grandpops was covering Millie duty some weekends and that sort of thing. So we had loads of time, especially when we weren't quite so locked down, to go for walks and do adventures. So we're adventurers, Millie and I. And so we started going. It started off when she was crawling under the bed. She was staying at our house. She has her bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. She's a very lucky girl. She was crawling under the bed. So like any responsible adult, I got her a head torch and told her she was potholing. And she did that until she fell asleep. And I sort of wrote the first story down. And then the second story was we started talking. She has a limb difference. She has no fingers.
Just explain what you mean by upper limb difference.
Upper limb difference is where through circumstances within the womb, with no traceable reasons, children can be born with half an arm, a missing hand, missing fingers, just a different construction. So Millie technically has all the bones in her hand, but she has no palm and she has no fingers. They didn't develop in the right way. So she has Thummy, which is the thumb on her left hand. And Thummy has a character all of his own and does a very good job. But so Millie's got this limb difference, and it's a good lesson in not setting the boundaries. And if you go back to my friend Ludwig Gutmann, one of my favourite films is The Best of Men, he says a line: "Don't focus on what people can't do, just focus on what they can do." And it's a good lesson because we focus on everything that Millie can do, and we're struggling to find the things that she can't do because she's born with no fingers on her left hand, and so she works it out. So But the key is we got to create time and spend time together. We'd go for a walk that would take you an hour and it would take us 3 hours while we made flint tools in a field for an hour and then cooked sausages on our jet boil while sitting in the park. But it's interesting, as a dad, I always felt I should be teaching my children. As a granddad, I'm sitting back and watching her learn and being far less involved because it's not my responsibility. And I think it tells you a lot about how education and how the growing of people can be done by letting them do it and encouraging them to work out how to do it. So, having time with Millie has been phenomenal. I mean, it's just fun,
Thank you very much.
And we are the adventurers. Well. But yes, and if anybody's out there and they've not heard of Limb Difference, there's a very good charity organisation called Reach. That's on the back of that.
I'll put that these details in the show notes if I may. Can
somewhere,
I do that?
Yeah, no, please do. I think somewhere on there they've got a PDF of the book. So the story of Millie's adventures is really there just to especially the second story, is just to express that limited edition. Prize it.
I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to come in. I hope people who are listening to this came about by chance. It came about by us actually saying everyone has got a story, everyone has got a set of experiences. And I think you have said so much that when I listen back and create the show notes for this, I just think there's a huge amount that's relevant and pertinent to every single leader at every level. But what it comes down to for me is about compassion and humanity.
Well, I think, again, the opportunity for me is, and one of the reasons I was so excited.
Were you excited?
I was excited.
Think, oh my!
No, I was excited. I'm not known for being quiet in the corner.
Right.
But one of the challenges, one of the things I know is I have limitations, and the project that has flashed into my mind is technically beyond me, but that's only if I try and do it on my own.
Right.
So if anybody else is interested in the support of young people coming out of care,
yes.
If they watch the documentary on the BBC, which is available on iPlayer, about care leavers.
What's it called? Do you remember the title?
I think it's just Leaving Care or something like that.
Right, okay.
Look up Joe Swash.
Joe Swash. Okay.
Joe Swash. And if anybody's out there and they've got some time and some talent and would like to join in, especially if you're in the UK comms industry,
yes.
Reach out to me, because I'm not sure what the answer is, but I'm sure we should find one.
Well, we're going to link back to Vorboss on this as well.
Yeah, well, that'd be great, because those guys, what they proved to me was
they're doing a great job,
that if you organise things properly and believe in what you're doing, because that's clear from them, they believe in the way that they're going about it, then we can achieve entirely great things. We might fail, but as long as we try, then that's good enough.
Oh, well, there's a good shout out, and I think there's a big thank you as well, isn't there, to Tim and Team Vorboss for this conversation and us meeting and us staying connected, and hopefully we can go on to do pretty good things. Thank you so much, Iain, for taking the time to come on into the studio and being part of the Leadership Enigma. I hope you've had fun. I hope it's met your expectations.
It has. I think it was really interesting. I was talking to my wife this morning, and she said, "Are you looking forward to this, or are you nervous about it?" And she said, "How long are they going to talk to you?" I said, "An hour." She went, "An hour?" And then she went, "No, that's okay. He'll talk for an hour." But it's funny that I mention her only at the last. But Emma is one of those people, and there are millions of them around, who create the space for other people to do their stuff. I still consider her to be the biggest influence on my life. Been together since we were 14, by the way, which is not yesterday.
Yeah.
But I think, again, we should listen more to the quiet people who just create opportunity, as well as listening to the people who are prepared to stand up and talk and dream and paint a picture and create a narrative that people can follow. So.
Well, Iain, I hope we've done you justice by holding the space, having this conversation, and perhaps we've just done a little bit of good. And even if that's for one person, then that was always the plan. Listen, thanks so much for coming into the studio.
It was fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Join us again next week for more curiosity and insight with the Leadership Enigma. We'd love to hear your comments on today's show, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests. Get in touch with me on LinkedIn or visit us at www.leadersenigma.com. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe on all your major podcast platforms and on our dedicated YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining the community.